This is Tapestry, a game that represents such an interesting little chapter in the larger story of Stonemaier Games. Now, Stonemaier, probably one of the bigger names in board game publishing today. They have their own host of in-house designs that have seen tremendous success. Scythe, if you've seen my top 10 games of all time, Viticulture, and of course, they took a chance on Wingspan, and we know the rest is history there. It has become one of the biggest mainstream board game successes ever. But Tapestry doesn't get involved in many of those conversations, and a big reason for that is the apparent imbalance of its different asymmetric civilizations. You see, you'll get to pick a civ in this game and play through it. It gives you different benefits and ways to play, but it's become apparent ever since this game first came out in 2019 that not all civs are created equal. It's like, oh yeah, I get to be people from the future, I guess I win the game then. But to Stonemeier's credit, they have done a great job in listening to the community, poring over the data, and trying to find ways to balance out the civs and make them more even. In fact, they just released a new civ pack that tries to rebalance all of the base civilizations here, as well as all of them in the different expansions. So that's why I thought it was a good time to talk about Tapestry. I've played a ton of games over the last 2 weeks, both in person and on Board Game Arena, and I want to give you 5 things that you should consider if you're going to be getting this game for the first time, or maybe want to revisit it now that all of the civs are coming out with kind of these new ways of playing. So I'm Jake, this is Get This Game, and this is Tapestry. Now, even though I've already said civilization like a bunch of times and we're only a couple minutes into the video, the first thing you need to know about Tapestry is this isn't actually a civilization game in the traditional sense. Like the Sid Meier, I'm going to simulate an entire civilization's lifespan from its early days into the future. No, Tapestry's much closer to a Euro-style game. What you're going to be doing is advancing your cubes up different tracks that are around the outside of the board. These tracks represent 4 of what a civilization would normally be dealing with and trying to grow over time. You have exploration, which is going to let you expand to new regions on the shared map in the middle of the board. Culture, which is much closer to kind of military interests that actually let you go out and conquer and take control of those new hexes that you're placing out. There's technology. Obviously, you're going to be growing out and discovering new technologies that will help advance your civilization. And science, which helps make everything easier. Stay in school, folks. Now you have some other things to manage. There is resource management, as well as your capital city, which represents a little grid on your board that you're going to be adding different structures to. As you build out that capital city, making it more noteworthy and populous, that's going to get you more resources over the course of the game, and over time you might even be able to fill it with different landmarks that, again, help that city grow and help you kind of fill in pieces to the board that advance your civilization further. So yeah, that's number 1. Just know when you're getting into this game, there's a little bit of player interaction where you are taking control of certain parts on the board, but it is very abstract in all sense of the imagination. So number 1 thing you need to know, yes, this is a civilization game, but it's not a civilization game. At number 2, let's talk a little bit more about those tracks, because yeah, there's some more stuff going on in Tapestry. There's a little bit of area control, a little bit of card play, a little bit of a spatial puzzle, but really the tracks are what make everything tick. Now, when I first started playing this game as a noob, I really thought I would be taking a specialist approach with these tracks. I would be choosing probably 1 or maybe 2 and looking to max it out as quickly and efficiently as possible so that I get really good at one thing and then everything else would kind of fall into place. Maybe one game I would try going really hard on technologies. Another game, maybe I would go for a really militant sort of style of play and race up that culture track so that I'm taking over large parts of the board. While that is fun and you can kind of work your way towards that, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to play this game. You really do have to be keeping an eye on 2 or even 3, maybe even all of the tracks throughout the course of this game, because they're going to be helping you out at different points throughout. Especially that technology track, for example. In my early games, I tried going hard on the culture track and the exploration track, really focusing on that center shared board of the map of the game. But then I got to my first income phase, and each income phase you get to upgrade a technology. Now, I hadn't touched the technology track, so I didn't end up even getting to upgrade anything. I mean, that's my bad on that point, right? I should have been keeping track of how my income works. But that goes to show that there are a lot of moving parts and knobs that you need to turn and twist around to be able to fully get the puzzle and really build up your engine to be doing really cool stuff throughout the game. And that flows nicely into the third thing I want to bring up about this game, which is you really got to be ready to play more than one of this. Tapestry is by no means a one and done situation. In order for you to really start understanding how each of the spaces on those tracks work, how they interact with each other, what you want to be minning and maxing, it's not going to be a one-time play where you're going to be able to figure that out all at once. Now, like I said, in preparation of this video, I played a ton of games on BGA, trying to just figure out what the heck I was supposed to do. Because straight up in my first game, I think I got somewhere around 70 points. And I had heard many people saying they were getting upwards of 200 points per game, which now that I have gotten a bit more experience, I can safely say that is very much attainable. But in today's age of really getting a game to the table once, maybe twice, and then moving on to the next one, Tapestry demands a lot more of you in that regard. Now, does the question need to come up around whether that's a good thing and whether that makes for a good game design? Well, I'm not going to make a call right here necessarily, but I do leave it up to you. Usually when I'm playing games, I, at least at the end of the game, have kind of figured out how everything works, and I can at least say, oh, next time I want to do X, Y, and Z differently. After my first game of Tapestry, I came out of that being, I just need to play this game to figure out what's going on. It really took a lot of butt kicking throughout the course of my BGA experiences to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't, because so much of this game is about knowing what tracks and what spaces on the different tracks around the board are going to be giving you. So you can really plan ahead, make those moves, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is with multiple plays. So if you are thinking about Tapestry, be ready to play it over and over and over to truly get an appreciation for it. At number 4, I want to talk about the impact that the unique civilizations have on the game, and by all means they do, and almost to a fault. As I said at the top, the imbalance of the different civs has been probably the biggest deterrent or negative point made about the game Tapestry. But in playing through everything and actually factoring in some of the balance changes and shifts that have been made to the game, I gotta say, it's still present to a certain extent, which is why I'm so excited to see how the new Civ pack kind of implements and changes up how each civilization plays. If you've seen me on TikTok, you know that I love asymmetric powers. I love the idea of each person around the table having a different strength, a different weakness, different benefits that they have going into the game that will impact their style of play. And sure enough, the civilizations that you are going to be taking on in Tapestry definitely have that. There's going to be civilizations that have you focus really heavily on military. There's going to be others that have you focusing on expanding out and exploring as much of the map as you can. Other civs simply are going to grant you bonuses based on certain other aspects of the game that aren't on the board. Things like technology cards or the way that you are configuring your capital city and what buildings you're going to be placing where. It's all really, really interesting stuff, and it's great to see that it does help you kind of point in a certain direction towards what your strategy is going to be. Unfortunately, the reality is that it continues to be a bit of an apples to oranges comparison in how each civilization kind of plays off of each other. In playing some games with some of the balance changes that have been corrected in the BGA version, you're essentially looking at certain civilizations maybe starting with a few more resources compared to other civilizations which maybe start with a few less to try and balance it out. But I'm really excited to see how the Civ pack adjusts pretty much everything across the board, because those initial changes kind of feel like they're pigeonholed in. Like, yeah, we're just trying to make things equal without thinking about the kind of thematic elements of The Alchemist, for example, starting with 10 extra points to start the game. But these new Civ packs are really looking at changing the text on each card so that it flows much better into the overall philosophy of the design, so that everyone isn't just starting with random amounts of resources arbitrarily. So again, the civilizations make a big impact, and time will tell to see if the adjusted civs really balance everything out. And at number 5, you have to be ready to crunch if you're going to be getting this game. Look, I pride myself as someone who doesn't suffer very much from AP, analysis paralysis. That moment where you are just scrutinizing over every little aspect of your turn each time, that you're taking up time away from other people's enjoyment of the game and just dragging everything out. In Tapestry, this is easily the longest amount of time I've spent on each of my turns in my entire board gaming career, to the point where my fiance even called me out on it in the heat of the moment. But It really is going back to that pulling levers mechanism. There is so much that you have to think about this game, even down to if you're moving to a spot and choosing a building to add to your town, all the different places and combinations and options of where you could put that single building into your capital city, because you have to think, if you're going up a certain track, you're going to be getting some bonus landmark spaces that have their own unique, bigger shapes. And now you're like, oh, well, I have to figure out where that's going to go so that I don't know where to put this building. But then if I move further up on this track, that's another building I have to account for. That doesn't even get into things like when to upgrade which technology cards, how they can cascade off of each other, and how even just different aspects of the science track or the exploration track are going to impact the middle board and where else you're going to go on the different tracks of the board. Look, all that's to say, there is a lot going on in this game, and I'm not ready to call it a heavy game by any means. There are way heavier games out there, but Tapestry being this kind of welcoming art style, this kind of welcoming idea of being a Civ game but not a full-on civilization simulation, you have to factor in that there is a lot to manage in this game and that you're going to be spending a lot of times just scrutinizing over what you're going to do. So with that said, we're going to get to the Get This Game scale. As a reminder, we rate games based on 3 criteria: gameplay and design, presentation, and just my overall fun factor, my experience with the game. Presentation gets ranked a little bit lower, and gameplay and design gets ranked a little bit more importantly. For gameplay and design, this is going to get a 7.5 out of 10 for me. Look, in the end, this is all about tracks on tracks on tracks. And if you like getting that constant feedback of getting a little benefit or reward on each of your turns, then at its base, Tapestry is going to be right up your alley and kind of check off that box. I also like that those tracks are feeding into other gaming elements and gameplay mechanics. Like, yeah, if I go up the blue track, I get to do some tiling and collect some resources. If I go up the red track, there's a little bit of area control that I get to do and a bit of player interaction. This track's going to let me get some cards that work off of each other, and of course, the whole time you're kind of working with this spatial puzzle on your capital city. I guess for me, where it loses some marks is it does all of these things, but only a little bit. Like, yeah, it's area control, but it's a tiny bit of area control. It's a little bit of card play, but it's just a tiny bit of card play. In the end, it's gonna lose some things for me there because, yeah, I get to do all this stuff, but I don't get to go kind of all the way with it. I will say the rule book is very detailed and very well written, and thank God it is very short. But in the end, the other place where this is going to lose a few marks for me is still going to be the imbalance of the civilizations. You can't deny that in its core box, at least as of right now, the current printing, you are working with some still imbalanced civilizations where just some are going to be better than others, and you're going to have to house rule maybe what civilizations are kind of involved in playing with each other. Presentation is absolutely getting a 9 out of 10 here. As with any Stonemaier games, the production level is at its highest quality. The art is absolutely gorgeous, and for a pretty abstract game, it's amazing how many little art components they can fit in just on alone based off of the different civilizations and that gorgeous art you're working with there. It's also not every day, and in fact a real rarity, to get fully painted miniatures, and this game comes with upwards of 15 or even more that you get to place on your board. So that table presence factor is really excellent. All of the different symbols and iconography look really great. The board is of high quality. You do get this kind of reinforced paper for your different player mats across the board. No knock there. I think they were able to find some cost there and it works. So overall, just I can't say enough good things about the presentation, and it definitely ups the overall score in that sense. Finally, the fun factor, just my overall experience and enjoyment of my plays of Tapestry. It's again going to get a 7.5 out of 10 for me. I'm someone who really loves his theme kind of flowing throughout the course of a board game, how it's really embedded into the actual game mechanics. And I would say for Tapestry, there are some nods to that being there, but maybe not as much theme integrated as I would want. Yes, the civilizations are all very different and have you doing very different things that make sense in the game world. Yeah, the militants want to be focusing on conquest. The isolationists have certain plays you can make that kind of separate you off and have no one else interfering with you. There's little flavors of that throughout, but in the end, you are still pushing cubes up different tracks, and that whole sense is very much abstracted in this game. So if that's something that you care about, again, this is very much a Euro game, so you might want to factor that this isn't going to be a full kind of civilization simulation. Finally, I have to bring it back to that replayability factor, and there is definitely replayability to be had just inherently in the civilizations you're going to play, but you also have to factor in that you're going to have to replay this game simply to fully understand all of the different moving pieces of it and how they interact with one another. For me, I was someone that really enjoyed that aspect of the game. I liked being able to play it over and over and over and over just to figure out what was going on and what I was supposed to do to really max out my score, but that's not going to be for everyone. Many people want to be able to sit at the table, kind of get the full experience of the game right then and there, and not be frustrated when somebody else who knows the game better is going to shoot up past that 200 point mark where they're still hovering around like 150. So replayability is there, just know that it might not be for the reason that you thought it was. So with those factors in mind, Tapestry is going to get a final Get This Game score of 7.8 out of 10. And who knows, with this new Civ pack now available and a few more plays, this number could very well go up in the long term. Hopefully this taught you a little bit more about Tapestry, some of the inherent controversies in it, and you figured out whether or not this is going to be a good addition to your shelf. As always, please do subscribe to the channel for more board game goodness. You can follow me on TikTok at GetThisGame and Instagram at GetThisBoardGame, and we'll see you for the next one.